everyone to the Pentucket Regional School Committee Business Meeting for November 7th, 2023. As will become clear very quickly to everybody, this is a little bit of a special meeting. This is our second annual State of the Schools, in which we invited Selectmen and Finance Committees and representatives from our partner towns to join us and sort of get the big picture on Pentucket Regional Schools in 2023-24. This is a regular business meeting for the school committee, so we'll go through some of our business right away, and then we'll get it over to Dr. B. Roll call. Wade.
Here.
Lana DeRocher.
Here.
Emily Blair.
Here.
Marie Falzani.
Yes.
Julie King. Here. The chair is present. Ashley McLaughlin. Chris Redding.
Here.
Dina Trotter.
Here.
Quorum.
3.93.
Thank you. Can we get a motion on consent agenda?
Second.
All those in favor? Subcommittee updates, finance and business,
No updates.
teaching, learning, and accountability,
No updates.
policy.
No real updates. We're having a meeting next week to go over things we discussed tonight, I'm assuming.
Community liaison communication,
No update.
and school committee goals are all set. We have no public comment tonight. And that brings us rolling into the superintendent's news and student representative's news.
So I'm going to defer, of course, to my colleague down at the end. Now, for those of you who are sitting around when you do talk, I see one's in front of Mr. Manning, one's in front of Ms. Reed. You have these little microphones. So you just press the button, power button, it looks like. When you press that, a blue light will come on, and when that blue light comes on, people will be able to hear you. If you don't want to be heard, press it again so the blue light's not on. Sometimes it can be very important. But I'll defer to my student colleague down at the end of the table. Take it away, student news.
Tap it once.
Just press the button once.
Okay. So most of the stuff I have today is mainly from student council, and it regards Spirit Week in general. Some main differences that we're adding into this year is the middle school is going to be joining us with dress-up days and our class videos and pep rally. They, however, are not coming to homecoming, and they're doing their separate games, which we have our Spirit Night, where we do class games, but they're kind of doing that separately. And then we are also adding in a turkey toss, which will be Saturday the 18th, I believe. And that also includes our powder puff game, which is either before or after. I would have to check on that. And Friday the 17th, we have homecoming. And then the following week on Tuesday, we have our Spirit Night, which is all of our games. And then that Wednesday is going to be our prep rally and videos. So all this information is also on our weekly SMORE email. So all the information is in there, which is especially good for middle school parents who are definitely not used to this whole setup, and kind of all the information that goes along with that. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. And just up here, yes, it is the first ever turkey toss. Officer Torrero, who's the school resource officer here, helped organize. I was trying to get other communities involved, but as is always the case, our communities are fine to do this. We have our fire departments and police departments, all three towns coming together to do this turkey toss. I am so incredibly curious to see what this actually is. What it involves. Turkeys flying around on a field is apparently what this will be. So that great update. Thank you so much. Also, just obviously, since the last time we were here, we did have that recognition. I appreciate the work put on by the middle school and high school to put together that evening. If you were able to be here, it was nice for the adults, but was more entertaining for me to watch the kids go out in all their costumes, because of course that was the Friday before Thanksgiving, or Friday before Halloween. And here at the school, there were definitely great costumes. We had, this is your math department was in Mario Kart. We had, let's see, your administrative team, the Wizard of Oz, some very good creativity there. And then also, I understand that this was like the winning one, the science department with their Barbie, whatever it is. But so, a lot of fun here, students and staff all doing it. This is why go halfway if you can go all the way with these things. So in addition to that, just important information just in terms of athletics. We, in the fall, had opened up athletics for sports where there was traditional shortage of student athletes, the 7th and 8th graders. So one of the things that I just wanted to report out with you, to you, is that this past fall, we had a total of 22 7th and 8th grade students participating. We had 6 JV field hockey, 10 playing JV girls soccer, and 6 playing JV boys soccer. The feedback was overall positive. There were some really lopsided JV games because you have 7th and 8th graders competing against 9th and 10th graders in some of those games. But it did allow those teams to exist, which was great. For the winter time, they're going to wait like they did for the fall. They'll wait for the numbers to see how many students actually sign up and show up. The thought right now is JV wrestling. That might be possible. It depends on the numbers. Hockey would be a no. It's just too physical. JV girls hockey is not available because that's an HPNA collaborative with Haverhill and North Andover. JV boys for JV2, that's possible. It depends on what the numbers are. Indoor track, we know that is a no. Alpine skiing's a no. Swimming's a no. Those are all co-ops. So right now it looks like you would have potential for boys basketball and girls basketball, but those both depend on the numbers, and JV wrestling as well.
Quick question, so just the 3 sports that you mentioned for the fall, those 3 JV teams were dependent on those numbers?
Yes, so very much field hockey, soccer, it was all rounded out with our 7th and 8th grade students. So again, beneficial in that it helped them exist. One of those situations where we would have put in waivers anyway, there's just now at this point, because they're all under one principle, you don't need to have the waivers. In addition to that, wanted to let you know that, so a lot of collaboration with Carol from Merrimack, along with Chief Shears, Mr. Seymour. We received a $30,000 grant. Mr. Manny, do you know anything about that $30,000 grant? Seems like you may have been the originator of said grant, but it is a $30,000 grant to enhance the safety communications within the Merrimack schools. So that's a great opportunity. Mr. Seymour is working with Chief Shears to try to nail down what we're going to do with that. I think we have a couple really good ideas. We also received a $5,000 grant from NASA. That's for our robotics program that just came in. It's one, and hopefully that's year 1. So they're giving us some seed money. I hope that'd be great to continue on in future years. We've done in the past the John Abigail Adams Scholarship recognition, where we plan on doing that right now in January. So at that January meeting, we should have that out to all students so they and their families can come and those students can be recognized. Mr. Conway has sent out requests for the physical education and wellness, the curriculum review. There were over 20 applicants. It got narrowed down to 7. So it's great to have that kind of interest. And then the DICE, the dog, retirement replacement. We did a presentation, Pam Shedd, Ms. Jenny Barlow, and Chris Redding did a presentation at the high school, and we did another one the following week over at Page for the elementary teachers. So we've got good feedback. Next step for us is interview process. We've submitted the down payment for $250 to have a reservation for 5 for the upcoming year. So now it ends up working on selection questions and a timeline for selecting the employees. So that, Mr. Chairman, is the news I have for you this evening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Brings us back to you, new business, state of schools and regional agreement.
All right, wonderful. So, I always like to stand during these, so I will stand. But just want to thank everybody for coming here tonight. This is far less in last year, all last year. all you got was me up front, blah, blah, blah. And this year, very, very different situation. It's not easy to get everybody together, so I appreciate so many of you being here. It's just good information to hear about the district, what's happening, and where we see things going. The information you're gonna hear tonight is gonna come from different groups of people, which you'll hear from them in a little bit. But first, we gotta introduce ourselves. So you have a microphone. If you could pass that microphone down and just make sure, just like in Ghostbusters, the lines don't cross, because you won't like it when they cross, that'd be great. So if you just introduce yourself, your town, your position, and that would be fabulous.
Carol McLeod, Town Administrator and Finance Director for Town of Merrimack.
Chris Mandy, Select Board Chair, Town of Merrimack.
Irina Gorzinski, Select Board Member, Merrimack.
Angus Jennings, Town Manager, West Newbury.
Wendy Reed, Select Board Chair, West Newbury.
Chris Weil, Select Board, West Newbury.
Rick Parker, Select Board, West Newbury.
Kathy Castellanos, Vice Chair, Board of Selectmen, Groveland.
Rebecca Oldham, Town Administrator, Town of Groveland.
Jason Nave, Select Board, Groveland.
Wayne Adams, School Committee, Merrimack.
Tina Trout, School Committee, West Newbury.
Lana DeRocher, School Committee, Town of Groveland.
Kaylee Linehan, 11th grader from Merrimack.
Chris Redding, School Committee from West Newbury.
Julie King, School Committee, Merrimack.
Emily Dwyer, School Committee, Groveland.
Marie Filzani, School Committee, West Newbury.
Chris Markins, School Committee Chair, Merrimack.
Mary Ann Naffa, Administrative Assistant.
Dan Ennis, the Finance Committee, West Newbury.
Ross Cavalupo, Finance Committee, West Newbury.
Ruth Rivard, Finance Committee from Groveland.
Bill O'Neill, Finance Committee, Groveland.
Bob Bender, Finance Committee of Merrimack. Apparently the only one that made it tonight.
And Jim Sparrowlakis, West Newbury Finance Committee.
Hey, guys.
Thanks.
All right, so again, thank you everybody for being here. I know it's one evening, but again, important information. First thing I just want to start with, this is our table of organization. If you go to prsd.org, if you click on the About Us, you'll see this table of organization. Obviously, if you're familiar with table of organization, it's categorized as to who oversees what. What you're going to be hearing from are people here at this level, in their areas, in their departments, how things look, how they're doing, areas that need to be improved, and where we see a lot of successes. So you'll hear from most of them, and after they're done, I'll go through and hit some finer points, some legislative points, things that are going on, just to loop you in, because as you recall, last year there was an awful lot of conversations, particularly about Chapter 70 funding and issues like that. So for how we're doing academically, I'm going to turn it over to Brent Conway, who is the Assistant Superintendent of Schools. So, Mr. Conway.
So thank you. I stand too most of the time. So how are we doing academically? So just to give you sort of quick history, a lot of text there, but more or less for the last 5 or 6 years, we have taken an approach to try and build tiered systems. So systems in our academics with our curriculum and professional development, that we build the capacity of our teachers to meet needs of students, whether those are students who are requiring assistance to get to a grade level expectation, or students who we can push beyond that. So building those systems, and it's a combination of professional development support for those educators and building principles, along with actually giving them the tools and the assessment tools that they need, and the curriculum tools they need to make those decisions. That has been a lot of the work. It's been around the focus of how we do that systematically rather than piece by piece by piece. So from that, how did this happen? We've had a series of implementations of new curriculum tools. So we started with math and social studies, English language arts, science, and this year we're doing PE and wellness. And we actually updated our math last year, but it was just the newer model. We've done that kindergarten through grade 6 at the elementaries. We've done it at the middle school with grades 7 and 8. And we've also been able to update a lot of components at the high school as well. We have used grant money. We have used money from towns. We have used ESSER funds. We've used a lot of different mechanisms to upgrade curriculum tools. Some of these texts and series had not been updated in close to 30 years. So it had been a long time since the district had really invested in curriculum. And we can't just give curriculum to teachers and expect them to do well. We have to train them. We have to have the assessment tools so they understand it as well. And then we need to give them the ongoing support. So all of that is part of that systematic culture of support, trust, and respect for each other. So what does that result in? Well, in 2017, our English Language Arts MCAS, and MCAS is only one measure, there's lots of measures, for all of our students, grades 3 through 10, in 2017 placed Pentucket 245th out of the 357 school districts in Massachusetts. That was in the 31st percentile for performance. And every year since then, since we started to build this out, we got better and better and better, and we're now in the 67th percentile. So we went from 245th to 119th. So still trending in the right direction. We figure we have still more growth and improvement there. It's not just in English Language Arts. We also see it in math. In fact, the growth is even more pronounced in math, to the point where it was the 25th percentile of schools in Massachusetts in 2017, and is now the 111th school district, 68th percentile overall. So some really good growth and improvement over time, little by little by little. It's hard sometimes for everyone to see it when you're in the weeds, but when you're able to step back and you see it over multiple years, there's a lot of movement there.
So when you're seeing this, if you do have questions here around the table, if you just raise your hand, take the mic, and certainly ask a question. I'm happy to answer. You got the right people here to answer for you.
We have focused on advanced academics as well. So over 80% of our graduating seniors are taking a class here that makes them eligible for college credit. That was a lot of the work Mr. Seymour put in place. It was kind of the vision he had for the high school, and we've been able to continue that work. We were accepted just recently into the Advanced Innovative Pathways Planning Program. That came with some grant money as well. So we are planning for 2 advanced pathways, environmental science biology and advanced manufacturing engineering. So Dr. Bartholomew recognized that we received a grant tonight from NASA. We've actually partnering with lots of industry partners who are giving sponsorships or donations towards this work, but we also need some of those local partners to help us provide internships and mentorships in these fields as well. So if you know people out there who are willing to get involved, own companies or businesses or work in those fields, please reach out to us. We're happy to work with them. We have 16 advanced placement offerings. We have dual enrollment partnerships with Merrimack College, Southern New Hampshire, early college programs. So we have students who are taking classes at Northern Essex. If we have a ferry, we get them there very quickly, but they take classes at Northern Essex, and believe it or not, we had 2 students last year who completed their associate's degree and received their associate's degree a week before receiving their high school diploma. So very cool. Over 150 students enrolled in DECA competitions, which is, this is DECA ground zero right here in these 2 rooms. These are our business classrooms. Our business programs have become so popular, we actually needed to use the second room. And we hired a second teacher to teach business classes. And we have over 30 students who have joined our first robotics team. These are really competitive, academic-oriented events that have grown tremendously just in the last 2 years. I mentioned all those AP classes. We earned distinction this year, the 2023 AP School Honor Roll. This actually places us as a school in the top 12% of schools across the country. Curriculum implementation, the last 5 years. I won't read through all these, but just by the nature of all the bullet points, you can understand we put a lot of different programs in place. Some of these are sort of text, but they're programmatic offerings. They allow us to build some cohesive and coherent curriculum across the entire district, so that if a student in kindergarten in Groveland is getting curriculum in math and literacy, we can be assured that the vast majority of that is going to be grounded in an evidence-based approach And it's going to be the same approach that is used in West Newbury and the same approach that is used in Merrimack as well, so across the board. And just recently as well, and we have plenty of local officials here today, last Friday we had our grand opening. We launched the Connections Cafe Coffee Cart, which is a life skills and jobs training program for our special education department for our students here at the high school. But they also combine with the business classes up here. So the students in the DECA program are helping to run it from business and school enterprise perspective, but helping our students with disabilities have an opportunity to learn some of those. So you are welcome on Friday mornings as local officials to swing by if you want the treat of the week, blueberry muffin, whatever it is they're making, cup of coffee, bring cash only though.
What time is that, Frank?
7:45 to 9. I think, who joined us? That's right, we had a couple people swing by, so I was glad, they were thrilled to see you. I know we had some police officers come by as well, and that made your day as well. So, and we do this not alone, we do this with partnerships as well. So we have numerous partnerships here. Mass Insight is a partnership we have, help us with our AP programming and professional development. JED Foundation, which we started with last year, mental health and systems planning around mental health. Massachusetts Partnerships for Youth. Mass Hire, this is one of the things related to our innovative pathways, building out, basically those two innovative pathways we mentioned are decided because it's the region and state's future workforce needs. So we're helping to have a pathway for advanced learning into college programming so students can meet the needs of the region. Power of Place, this is a new one for us. Collaborative PD, for PD, NEASC, so we've begun the high school accreditation process. We're working with the ADL, and we participate in numerous research studies just in the last few years. Mass General Hospital, Sale Laboratories, the Department of Ed, West Ed, Gulf of Maine Institute is one we're ongoing participating with. So we don't do this work alone. We have to do a lot of this together, and it does create the collaborative environment. So, and then we use a lot of grants. And I won't read all these off, but this is, a lot of grant money. These are just in the last 2 or 3 years. I think if we go back further, there was even more. These are competitive grants. So these are grants that we go seek that allow us to start something to get going. This money doesn't stick around forever. If we want to continue those programs, we have to figure out how to embed those costs or find a way where the costs are not necessarily needed anymore. But on the flip side of it, our dynamics have changed a little bit. At the federal level, we've actually had a big reduction in our federal entitlement grants. So that is not grant money we apply for. We are told how much we get and then have to explain how we use it within accordance of that. As a district, we used to receive $240,000 a year in federal Title I money. We now get $100,000. It's the lowest we've had in this district ever. It's nothing we're necessarily doing. It is the dynamics and demographics of the three communities together. And I think of note, we're still growing. We still have more work to do. We have some exciting things coming up this year that we'll be presenting about. But we were, from an accountability standpoint, in 2018, we were in the 43rd percentile of school districts in Massachusetts. And now in 2023, we're in the 68th percentile. So a lot of good work across the board. It is not the work of one individual. It's the collective efforts. And we're really thrilled at the progress and helping to see it. And we know that we have more that we need to do as we step ahead. So.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. I'll point out a lot of, so Mr. Conway and I started together. This is the start of our 6th year. And a lot of the work that was done, I mentioned this in years past, was we knew we were going to have to attack the curriculum, make sure our curriculum was aligned horizontally and vertically. And when you do that, we knew we had the people in the classrooms who were putting forth the energy and had the wanting and the desire for students to succeed. And with that, it has made a huge impact as you've seen. So I don't recall last year we were talking about your facilities and what the conditions they were in. A really big issue for all of you because there's money involved in taking care of your building. So I'm going to pass the microphone over to Mr. Seymour, who will go over that for us.
All right. Thank you, Dr. B. It's great to see everybody here tonight. So I just wanted to take a few minutes and talk about some things that are kind of from the operations and maintenance and facilities side of things. So you want to go to the, oh, that's right, you got control of everything here. All right, so a few things. One of the things we're really trying to focus on this year is just increasing the amount of communication that happens between the district and the towns related to operations and facilities. And so one of the things we're doing is just meeting on a regular basis with the town manager or finance director to just make sure that we are keeping in close communication around things that are happening on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, so that there are no surprises, that if things are happening, that we know about them ahead of time. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in the coming slides. Another aspect of this operations is around transportation. That's something that affects everybody in all of our 3 communities. There are really some ongoing challenges with transportation. Our buses run every day. They pick the kids up, they bring them home. But there are some driver shortage issues. And so again, it's another area where we're really trying to improve communication. One, between ourselves and our provider, which is Salter, but also making sure that they're notifying us and that we're able to notify parents if there are any changes, which unfortunately do happen on a regular basis. There just really aren't a lot of extra drivers, and so when they have someone out sick or some kind of an issue, we have to make some adjustments. So again, that's something that we're managing. We're managing it in a couple of different ways. One, we're trying to be proactive with our communication. We're also just trying to be creative around finding additional drivers. The district has also invested in some of our own vans to try to offset some of our field trips or some of our athletic trips and things like that. And again, that's early, but that's already really paying off for us, which has been nice. So another aspect of our facilities and operations is a new system, which is called FMX. Some of you may be familiar with the school due term, which is the previous iteration of this. FMX is new for us this year. We're really excited about the potential that this has for doing a couple of things. One is really tracking all of the facility-related issues that come up on a regular basis. So this is something that folks in all of our buildings are able to go into and register that there's an issue, and that on the operations and facilities side, we can see that, and then we can assign people, and we can track those things. And then as well, this is our vehicle to schedule facility use. So for those groups and organizations in the communities that want to come in and use the buildings, and the buildings are used nonstop, constantly, I think people are finding that this is an easy system to use. So I just put a couple of screenshots in here just to show you that. So from the sort of tracking issues, I just created this one just for tonight, but essentially, you know, somebody could go in a building and say there's a ballast out in a room, right? And the ballast just runs the lights. These happen all the time. So you can register where that is, and then it can come to myself or to Bob Danforth, and then we can assign our electrician or somebody to do that and track it and mark it as resolved.
So one thing I'll point out, I believe, Kathy, you had asked us last year at this meeting about what are all the things that have been going on in our buildings, and it's a great question, right? In your building, if you have a chronic issue that's going on, you're going to want to know about it because it's going to be expensive to fix. So this is kind of one of our solutions to that. School Dude was okay at tracking that. FMX would be far superior to that. There's still some pieces we're trying to work out. Like you can see, there's a cost of $0. But just to try to go ahead.
This was a
your example.
just kind of created just as a template for tonight.
But this should be hugely beneficial to your respective towns, because your towns now you can see, hey, here's a list of everything that's been done and about how much it's costing the school district and you for issues that are out there. And you might see something that's showing up time and time again, which might just be a symptom of a bigger issue.
Thank you. All right, so I also just added, this is more from a facility use point of view, and this is kind of just a sampling of different groups that have been using the facilities. These are all outdoor facilities, so, you know, again, the facilities are being used on a regular, ongoing basis, which is really exciting to see. And then this is more from the inside, so this is folks using the auditorium. So again, it's a busy place. This building is busy, but really all of the buildings are busy, and we're just coming up to basketball season, so the gym in every elementary school is now booked every night from 5:30 to 8:30 or 9. So again, these are just some tools that we're using. We're getting up to speed with it. I've found it to be really great. So I wanted to just take a minute and talk about the buildings themselves from 2 points of view. So this is building updates, and then this next is more like capital, bigger picture things. So just to give you a sense, right? So as Dr. B was saying, we want to try to be on top of what are those issues that are coming up so we can, one, obviously fix them, but then also track to see, like, is there something more systemic here that's going on? So, you know, for the Bagnell School, we've had a number of plumbing-related issues that have come up. So again, we're repairing them, we're taking care of them, but it just seems like there are a bunch of these issues that are coming up. The town of Groveland did really nice work over the summer by installing this bottle fill stations and bubblers in the building. So instead of just water fountains, it's bottle fills now, which is really what is all the rage. But due to some lead pipe issues, they were able to get some money and through their capital planning process and install straight lines, clean lines all the way into these. So that was really a great upgrade, and I know everyone's really excited about that. As well, we have new internet switches and points of access points being installed at Bagnell and in actually all of the elementary schools. That's ongoing work that's happening right now. So for the Page School, there was a lot of work done on the boiler system over the summer to get it ready for this winter. Those are up and running and good to go. One of the issues up at Page is the elevator. Anybody that's associated with the school knows that's been an ongoing issue. It went down at the end of the school year. We had worked on it over the summer. That failed. We had it done again. So again, it's working, but this is one of those things that we have our eye on as a constant issue. And again, new switches and access points in at Page. The Donahue and Sweetser over in Merrimack. In Donahue, new boilers were installed. These were boilers that had been previously in the old middle school. They were very, very new. They had a lot of life left in them. Those are now installed over at Donahue, up and running, and everything's going great there. And we did have some safety grant money that was used to install a door access and camera system there, and new switches and access points in Merrimack as well. So that's been great. And here in this building, of course, you know, we all know this building opened for the first time last school year. This fall, we got all of the athletic fields come online. And so at this point, we're sort of not finished with the project, but we're in sort of the wrap-up phases of it with a lot of punch list item kinds of things, you know, making sure that everything's up and running, the systems, which really can take, you know, a year or two for all those things to really have all sort of the kinks worked out of them. And that's really where we are in that process. So then to just think a little bit about maybe down the road a little bit more. And again, we're right in the middle of this capital planning process. In fact, just in relation to trying to increase the amount of communication that's happening between the district and the towns, again, we're meeting on a regular basis. The business manager, the superintendent, and I are meeting with the finance directors and town managers. I met with each of them today, just coincidentally, and we were talking all about capital planning process and trying to, again, identify and prioritize what are some bigger issues so that we can be planning and be ready for them. So, you know, in terms of the Bagnell School, there are some things on that capital plan for continuing to address some asbestos flooring. So, nothing dangerous, but there is asbestos flooring in there. It's one of those things that if you can plan for it and you get ahead of it and you do a little bit at a time, eventually it's all gone. There's a cafeteria door that's related to school safety relocation project that's in the works as well. And talking about, you know, some 911 classroom phone, you know, system upgrades there as well. Over at the Sweetser and the Donahue, again, doing the similar work around planning for asbestos tile removals. Again, just taking a little bite at a time. We're looking at expanding some of the work that we did with the Donahue around the cameras and the access. The $30,000 that Chris was instrumental in getting, we're looking at maybe leveraging that to help us do the same thing at the Sweetser School, which would be a really nice upgrade. And you know, the Page and West Newbury, you guys are really taking an active role in trying to understand the needs at that building. I was at the select meeting a couple weeks ago where their architecture firm that's doing their assessment presented. It was very informative, and that is really going to guide all of the capital planning that happens in West Newbury related to the Page School. So I guess to kind of sum and to wrap up, one, the buildings are open, they're all working, everything is you know, going along, but issues come up constantly, right? There are just constant issues that come to Bob and I around things that need to be repaired. So again, we respond, we repair. It's a plumbing issue, it's an electrical issue, whatever it might be. And you know, again, what we're trying to do is just make sure we've got good communication so that the towns and the district are working really well together so that we're anticipating, you know, some of those bigger issues that can come down the road. So Thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit about the district from the facilities point of view. And I'm going to turn it back over to Justin, Dr. B, the doctor. Take it away. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So that's from Mr. Seymour. I'm going to now, you'll notice that there's one person missing from our, you notice because you don't hear the loud, obnoxious voice. And I know he's watching, so Greg, he's retired now. He retires. Last day was actually Halloween. But for the past month, we were extraordinarily fortunate to find Suzanne Wallace, who has had time working in finances at a regional school district and then as a business manager at a neighboring school district. So we're very fortunate to have her on board. You know, she's still trying to figure us out, but
Yes,
here,
I am.
Ms. Wallace, here you are.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. B. I just want to say thank you for having me here. I'm happy to be here. I'm looking forward to working in Pentucket with all of you. So I did have a month with Mr. Lebrecht, which was very fortunate for me, and I learned a lot. I'm still getting through everything, but I look forward to working with all of you. So we're looking at the budget process timeline for this year, which is that time of year. Right now, we've been doing some internal prep. We plan from now through December, we'll be meeting with admin and principals, and they'll be presenting to the superintendent. Of course, we'll present the budget to you in January. This is pretty much what you see every year, except this year the governor's budget will be out a lot sooner than last year. So nothing is really changing with this timeline. The public hearing is scheduled for the 27th, and then we will move to get them certified at the towns and at the town meetings. So I don't foresee anything crazy to come about, but we will keep our fingers crossed. Thank you.
Just to help, does anybody have really challenging specific questions we can ask Suzanne right now? I'd be curious to see how this goes. So I will say she's been awesome. It's been absolutely fabulous. So you all understand, like she was sharing an office with Greg for an entire month. So if you can tolerate that, like, and it's remarkable. But we will badly miss Greg. I mean, his expertise. And one of the things he said to me before he left was, doesn't matter, call away. I'm not going to go anywhere else. Pentucket is going to be a priority for me above any other jobs I may do. If you need something, I'll come to you first. So it's always nice to know that we have him in our back pocket and also living here in Groveland. So now we're going to go over to Dr. Jarvis, who oversees, he's the Director of Student Services and oversees special education. Special education, as you know, comprises about a third of our operating budget. So Dr. Jarvis, here you are.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity here tonight. So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about the expenditures in a 3-year walk back. I don't include fiscal 24 because we're in it and it would skew the results as compared to the other years because we're not done with it, of course. We're going to talk then about special education programs. So in essence, what are we doing about it? And then in the projection out would be our renewal process. So those are the 3 things I'll focus on here. So our 3-year walk back. So the left column, ODD, it's out of district. That's our expenditures for each year, the last 3 years. So you can see some dips there and then an increase. Perhaps that's somewhat pandemic related. We'll get into some of the details as we go through with this. Then the next row we go with private day schools. Again, we see that commensurate dip and then rise back up. Then I thought it was really important to put in and call out the residential, that's the 3rd column down, the res eds, the residential programs. So these are real intensive programming, 365, 24/7 kinds of programs. So 3 years ago, we had 6 students, that's what the 6 is, and that was our total cost for 6 students. And so there's been a trending downward for the demand for residential placements. So the cost you might see isn't directly correlated with the number of students that we have there, because there could be a range of what the tuitions are. It can range from $200,000 all the way up to almost $500,000 a year. And that's really driven by two factors. That's opportunity and opening, and there weren't many because of the pandemic. And then also severity of needs that impact that. Let's see, so the collaborative line. So that gives us that increase, so it does the opposite of what the private line was doing earlier. As we go across the 3 years, it rises up and continues on that trend. So collaboratives typically focus on social and or emotional issues for students in programming that correlate with that area of disability, and also autism. And those are our two categories that we've seen a huge influx of high intensive needs. And then a number of out of districts, these are the number of students. So these are, I put these numbers up here, they're not really hard and fast. And what I mean by that is that we could, so fiscal 21, it says 43, we could, in that time, we could have kids that we brought back from the district or went out. So I counted the number if they had any time going out of district. And that was a huge jump from 5 years ago, fiscal 21. And then we see the downward trend as we go through from 43 to 39 to 38. Present snapshot for fiscal 24, albeit it's not done, it's down to about 34 students. So really what we're doing about it, so these are our district programs. So the following district programs I'll outline. I'll give you the program snapshot design and the numbers that we're serving. And it doesn't include any of our inclusion programs. So these are just separate programs. Also, so not every child that's in a separate program is in there for the entire part of their day. It could be what we call a hybrid delivery of instruction. So kids could be in a separate program, but also flex into the general programs or classes as per the team. Yeah.
So it's really important for everybody here that just kind of notice the difference. Can you go back one slide? So this, all those funds, those are subject to circuit breaker. So we get reimbursed for out of districts expenses. When you move forward though, go back to the slide here, it's not. So all these programs, you'll see the next few slides are all smart programs. There is no reimbursement for this. So these are programs that Dr. Jarvis has created to keep students here in the district, which is what you want. And it's expensive, and there is no reimbursement for it. So that's how you end up having such a big increase. But again, every student deserves the right education, proper education. So we are providing, through Dr. Jarvis, just excellent programming at all the schools to help keep the students here in their home district where their peers are going to be, where they can grow, play, and just be a part of the community.
So to focus on Donahue and Sweetser, our schools in Merrimack, we have 4 early elementary communication classrooms serving 24 students. These are intensive needs classrooms. So largely, not all, but most of the students enrolled in these classrooms have a one-to-one with them because of the nature of the instruction. So severe autism. And so at Donahue, 2 upper elementary communication classrooms, we're serving 17 students. Many of these students actually flex into the general ed at portions of the day, but require intensive services to support them at that end. And in the upper elementary Horizons program, it's a cohort that's a standalone, and that is, it's a program that doesn't serve necessarily students with autism, but it serves students with intellectual impairments, and there's 5 of them in that cohort. So intensive instruction that's required for that. Not every child has a one-to-one in there, but there are 2 paraprofessionals. Yes?
Roughly, without napkin math, looking at that picture right there, how many staff total do you think you're talking about to operate those programs?
So you're asking about, so not just teachers, but paraprofessionals?
Correct, yeah, entire,
Yeah.
just employees.
So the left number would be the number of teachers, so that would be 7. And then you're looking at one-to-ones, you're looking at least 15 for that cohort of 4 teachers. And then you're looking at, so that's 22, and you're looking at somewhere around 8 paraprofessionals for the 2 upper communications classrooms and 2 for the Horizons program. So that brings it close to over 30.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's intensive needs, but what we do when we create programs, we don't get reimbursement for it, but we have control on what we're reaching and how we're reaching and teaching our students. And on the state reporting end, we're still responsible for any kind of state reporting in the way of MCAS. So if we own it, then we can be more responsible for it. So to jump through to, Page Elementary School, so it has 2 programs. The first program, this is brand new this year, so this is a cohort of kids that require intensive needs at the preschool level, and there are 4 students enrolled in the program. And I'm seeing a likelihood of at least 2 more referrals on the horizon. So that's filling up quickly. So in the language skills program, which is a version of a language-based orientation, so kids with reading issues, dyslexia, and literacy issues, and we have 2 classrooms there serving 12 students. There's a bubble there, you can see, with 8 kids at the early elementary level. So Bagnell is home to 3 different programs. What we have here is our language-based program. That's been the longest standing literacy kind of program in the district. It serves 8 students at the early elementary level, 9 students at the upper elementary, and those numbers are pretty much capped out. FAST program, that's our program for social emotional needs. So this is an ever-growing program, as you can imagine, for all the things that we discussed with the out-of-district needs. So the early elementary program right now has 5 students, but we've just had some new students enrolled in the district, and they're coming from out of state, and they'll be in this program as per the IEP. The upper program is now currently serving 4 students. It being November, I would anticipate some more referrals there. Lastly, for Bagnell is this program has been in existence for now 2 years, and it's 1 teacher. It's intensive needs for 6 students, not necessarily autism. That brings us to our middle school, high school. And so it's really important that we have vertical alignment with our programming so that students have a place to go. In a district at our size, sometimes that can be challenging because you have bubbles and you won't have, or pockets of kids with common needs, but you might not have per grade level. That's a challenge in a district this size. So the way of us contending with that, I'll get to in a moment. So this one has the middle school has 1 intensive autism program serving 3 students. So this is an example. That's not a lot of kids for the program. They don't require necessarily a 1-to-1 for all the kids enrolled in the program, but we do have 2 paraprofessionals in there because of the educational needs and social emotional support as well. We have 2 language skills programs or classrooms between the middle school and the high school serving 15 students. We have 1 visions program, that's a postgraduate program for students who have intellectual disabilities, and our connections program is our high school level program for kids with intellectual disabilities. There are 7 kids total there. We have 2 language-based programs, 1 at the middle school, 1 at the high school, and that has 13 students collectively. And then, that's 13 students for the middle school, my apologies. It's 2 teachers really for the language-based program for the middle school, sorry about that. And then we have 1 teacher serving 17 students, and it's a rotisserie of staff that also work with that program on the math level or written expression. So middle school has a therapeutic intervention program that serves 8 students. that can be a blend of inclusion support as well as sub-separate support. And then the high school has another therapeutic program that serves 7 students. Most of the high school students are in that program fully immersed for core subjects for the 7 students.
Can you explain what the therapeutic means?
Yeah, sure. I should look for hands. So, so the therapeutic, it's for students that have, that receive special ed services for emotional disability, that range from anxiety, depression, a multitude of DSM-5 diagnoses. And the idea is that we have a therapeutic blend of both instructional support and therapeutic support. So really working on coping strategies given the circumstances that children are going through. Yes.
So that therapeutic middle school and high school is the follow-up to the programs at the Bagnell that I
That's
just
the
changed.
FAST program, right. Yeah, that's vertically aligned, yes.
Okay. And I do have another question, didn't
Yeah.
I? So, can I just ask, so why are there language-based classrooms in 2 separate buildings?
Yeah, that's a really good question, I appreciate that. So they also have different names, although they're nuanced, right? So it's language skills and language based. So Bagnell has language based, language skills is that page, and the clinical profiles are slightly different. So it's really targeted instruction given their clinical profiles. But it's very similar kind of instruction, but the entry points might be a little bit different because of their clinical profiles.
I guess my question is not necessarily what are the profiles, but I know that kids in programs like that often use, you know, they have a speech and language pathologist that works specifically with those kids, or a reading specialist or whoever. And it seems like with such small numbers that they might be able to share some of those support people between, even though the head teacher, the programmatic teacher might be stuck.
The gaps are different.
Yeah.
They're vastly different. No, I won't say vastly, but they're significantly different. So we have a different clinical orientation to addressing the deficits. So, so one program might, so the language skills program, you might have multiple grade deficits if you look at it in terms of grade level. As compared to language based, it wouldn't be as extreme necessarily. Yes.
I'm new to all this, so maybe you could educate me. What's the difference between a language skills program and a language-based program? But I mean,
Yeah.
more specifically.
More specifically, so when I say clinical profiles, so that I won't go into immense detail with that, but that's with our evaluations. So that goes into cognitive capacities measured up against achievement assessments, which go into skill-based capacities or abilities. So there are different profiles with the results of those kinds of assessments, and so therefore our programming is different. So there are entry points as it pertains to everyday kind of instruction. Their entry points for the language-based program would be different for the language skills program. So if both programs are at 3rd grade, the entry point would be different for language-based 3rd grade and language skills 3rd grade.
When you say skills, can you be more specific? What skills?
Reading, writing, math, executive functioning, social pragmatics, receptive language, expressive language.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I think one of the other things that isn't necessarily included in this, but is part of what the special education program relies on are, Emily kind of mentioned it, with the service providers, the OTs, the PTs, and the number of students in the different buildings, and can you go into that as far as how much of a juggle that is to make sure that those needs are being met throughout the district?
So that's actually a really good point. So as we expand on programs to provide opportunities to stay in district, that too puts a strain on the infrastructure that we have. So as you expand on language-based programming, you're likely going to expand on speech and language services. So yes, we had to increase, in particular, speech and language services over the last few years. We had to have incremental increases in that area. Same thing with occupational therapy. Yeah. So program renewal process, and so this is along the line of what are we doing about it, right? So we started with some expenditures, talked about programs, and the alarming kind of number, if you look here, programs serving students, 154 students in the district are in a district program. Again, I want to emphasize that doesn't mean they're locked away from general ed opportunities for all their time. Some of the students are in a hybrid kind of version of the program, but they require intensive instruction, and that's really what district programs are set out to do. So that number is high. So on an annual basis, we have a multi-pronged data analysis process to inform what we do on a clinical level, practical level, functional level with our programs each year, so that our programs are adapting to what the data points our students are telling us and not the other way. Our programs need to be responsive to what our students are telling us they need. So as part of this process, that's what we have to do to address this number, 154 students. And the other part to this is that we have to really have a focus on our inclusion program and make sure that our inclusion program and the services that coincide with an inclusion program, we're not over-depending on our district programs. We need to make our inclusion program more robust, instructionally, and in the ways of supporting social and emotional needs of students, the whole child. Yes?
Can you just very quickly define inclusion?
Oh, sure. So very simply, inclusion is, means that the special education services go to the child in the general ed setting, rather than the child go to the services outside of the separate general ed setting. It's very including them into the services. Yes?
So I'm new to this also, but it seems like if you, with the district, is building this very robust system for these students, is the intent to draw students in, and is that connected to the out-of-district folks coming in? Is there a...
Exactly right.
Almost strategic in a sense?
It is.
Okay.
To provide opportunities for students to receive an education in their either neighborhood school or within district, so yes.
So is there a benefit to drawing out-of-district students into these programs? I'm confused about out-of-district.
Yes, so exactly right. So it's not just necessarily a stopgap service so that students have an opportunity to stay in district, but there can also be a two-way street where students who are out of district can come back into the district via one of our programs.
Can you clarify what out-of-district means? Because I think maybe he's working off a different definition.
Out-of-district means a private or a collaborative school.
So there are students.
It's tuition, they tuition students who are out of district, yes.
But I think that earlier you had mentioned that some students were moving into our district.
Yeah.
Are those the students you're referring to, the students that are moving into our district?
I'm sorry?
Were you referring to the students that he had mentioned were moving into our district?
I was actually referring to Dr. B's slide earlier in the presentation about what I perceived just general out of district, and I thought you had said at one point that it was both ways, going out and coming in.
So out-of-district students are residents of these three towns who are provided an education outside of the public schools that we operate.
And the cost?
So they currently reside here.
The district absorbs the cost.
They're not students who live in different towns who are moving in. That's a different definition.
And to be clear, there's a lengthy process for determining if a student has needs that can't be met by services within the district, at which point they have to be sent to an out-of-district provider.
Right, so there's strategy in building programs here, because if you build programs here, primarily your strategy is you're keeping students who need to be, or who are going to be growing up in this district with their peers. A student who goes out is definitively more expensive, because you're paying the tuition for whatever that private school or the collaborative is. We belong to two collaboratives, those tend to be the cheapest, and I think those are about $65,000 cheapest for tuition, but then you also have transportation costs, which pretty much puts that up close to about $100,000 per student. It depends on what the route is, right?
I guess as it says influx, it made me think, are we drawing in more business, if you will,
There is no strategy to build programming to have more people move into the district.
So I can just, so that's another bullet, so influx of early elementary high needs. So that we've had district-wide, there has been an influx of students in demand, of students that require more support in the last 3 years. So that's really what that means. So that means that we have to change our programming to meet their needs. So these are kids who are within our district, who are enrolled in our district, and require more support. So our programs have to adapt to meet those needs, is what I'm saying. Yes. Yep. Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I think in response to that, there could be, like, if the district were to have a really robust, good program that's succeeding with a lot of these kids with these needs, there could be people who move into the district, either by renting or purchasing houses, because they know about that. But it would be the same thing that residents would move in because, you know, there's a great basketball program here, things like that. So I do think that has to be something that, since I've been on the school committee, we've looked at. Like, and I think there have been years where our numbers are higher than others as far as who's moving into the district, but it's that kind of catch-22. Like, you want to provide the services for the students in your district, but you don't necessarily want more people to keep moving in, and then, you know, it creates a bigger population that you're serving, so.
Yeah, other questions?
Yeah, would you clarify I think Dr. B made a comment about the out-of-district programs and the cost associated with that. Are they being reimbursed by the state? Did I hear that?
So yes. So if you go back to.
Oh, wait a second.
Yeah.
I've got an entire slide just on that.
Fair enough.
So I figured I'd follow, so if you hold on that, and I'll give you an example, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
So I just want to finish up with this. So there's an increase of students who are receiving services in the way of social and/or emotional support and/or autism. So we have to adapt what we're doing with our plans moving forward, and then we have to make sure that we are realigning our programs so that they are continue to be vertically aligned to provide students to have a place for them to go as we move forward. So thank you for your time. Oh, yeah, question?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So the Special Education Parent Advisory Council, I know it's been kind of dormant for the last few years, but are you looking to involve them anymore in participating in really getting people aware of like how special education and keeping kids in our district and what the district offers for them?
Yeah, so Mrs. Sargent and I just met.
Yes.
So she just shared with me now, so the CPAC has, what's it, the 503, is that?
They did, they just created a
501?
Yeah, for fundraising, but
Well, that's
have you
great.
been a stipend now or anything like that, just because you participate so closely?
Yeah, so there's, so she's got 25 members now.
CPAC is.
Oh, sorry, CPAC. So it's a Special Education Parent Advisory Committee. It's a very important entity for the school district to work as a partner to ensure that we have the best services available for our students.
Keeping them in district,
Well,
as much as we can, within our.
so the other thing is I'll be introducing her at one of the upcoming school committee meetings, I think in November, later part of November. Okay, great, thanks.
So definitely some perspectives that you may not have ever seen before or considered. But what we're going to go through now is kind of elaborate some of what we talked about, some things that we're not able to get to. So the funding front, this has been one of the ongoing questions that comes up. It was a big one last year. And we know, based on what we hear in the legislature, this is not going to change in 2, maybe 3 more years. So they're looking at it. That takes time to look at it. 2 years is always required. So we're going to see what happens with the funding. But we know here, the way things currently go, what we get is been unpredictable. It used to be consistent. Like it was consistent up through the mid-2000s, and then there was a challenge to the way the funding was being done. So we are now back at the 2-step process. And that is, here's your minimum required, is you have to do per town, and here's how many students you have, and that's how much you end up paying. So that unpredictability, we've seen that the last couple of years for Groveland and Merrimack. Like that has happened. And then the other part these are unknown. So we are pretty good at being able to control what we can control. So this information about the state now being $355 million, the Department of Revenue saying they're $355 million behind on where they were anticipating being, does that have an impact on public education? Don't know. We could guess yes, but there's other money that's sitting out there that won't get used that they've set aside, so it's hard to say. And then the two-step method, that's what we have. That's what we use. By statute, if we go through, that's what we use. If we can come up with a different method, if the three towns say, hey, we'd rather do just number of students, that's how we're gonna pay, then that can be done. But for each of the towns, sometimes that's a benefit, sometimes that's a negative. So every year, that discussion takes place about, hey, what if we did it this way, what if we did it that way? Greg would run those numbers, Suzanne would run those numbers moving forward, and we can see for the towns, how does that work out? Because if you can get to a more stable point, it's just easier for everybody to predict and to plan. So just circuit breaker, here we go. So just a few topics in regards to special education with circuit breaker. So when a student goes out of district to a collaborative or to a private entity, there's a foundational budget amount that we have to pay up front. So if you go to the very bottom, you can see here an example. If there's an out-of-district expense of $100,000, that was the expense. In that instance, the foundational budget, so there's a threshold. So the foundational budget, we are right now paying 4 times, that's everybody does it. It's not Pentucket specific, it's every school district pays 4 times the threshold, which I believe this year is right around $57,052. So we pay that right out of the gate. Circuit breaker the last 2 years has paid at what it had promised to do, and that's pay it back at 75%. So the state pays, we have the $100,000, you take out the $57,000 that we would have paid, and then the state pays 75% of the remainder. So the total amount that Pentucket pays of this $100,000, we end up paying $67,789, and the state reimburses us the following year, and that's a very important piece. They reimburse us the following year that $32,211. But we do our budgets in March, April, and it gets approved at town meeting in May. So if a student moves into our school district and they need outplacement, 24/7, 365, we have to pay for that for the following year. As you heard Dr. Jarvis say, that's going to range anywhere from 200 plus to just depends. Some of them are over $500,000 that we have to pay up front. There is no reimbursement. It's not, hey, just pay the $57,000 and 25%. It's we pay that full amount. So if it's $380,000, we have to come up with that $380,000 somehow. So when people ask, well, why do you have money in reserves? Why did you spend it? Because this happens. When I first came here, I think we had, when I saw 21, there were 6 students out, I think we had 7. And that 7, just so you know, was a huge number. Like if you added up all the towns around us, they didn't have 7 total in that situation, and we had 7 here in our community. And it's fine, like they're where they need to be, but it's an extraordinary expense. So the district, like that's that second point, district's 100% responsible for it. So another nice thing that's happened is that the state a few years ago passed legislation that allows for us to submit for transportation reimbursement. This past year, so fiscal year 23, they're reimbursing us at 50%. So this upcoming year, it was written that's supposed to be 100%, but there's always this line, subject to appropriation, which means if they have the money, you get paid the money. If they don't have the money, you don't get it. Circuit breaker at 75% does not always happen. Dr. Jarvis, in the last 20 years, how many times have they paid circuit breakers? Or Ms. Wallace, how many times have they paid the full 75% the last 20 years? What percentage about of the time?
Maybe 60%, I don't know.
Yeah. So
60 years.
What's that?
Single-digit years.
Single-digit years, okay. So 60% of the time is the, yes, so it's not all the time. You don't get that 75% of the time. I think it's gone as low. I've seen 62%. And so when you only get 62% back, that amount of money you're getting back, that 32,211, that's the maximum we're getting back, yes.
I did look at that over the summer, and I think the last 5 years he's done pretty well.
Yep.
And
So-
sometimes better than the 75.
Better than the
was
75.
Yeah.
Dr. Jarvis.
Yep, I spent some summertime on this.
He's the Director of Student Services. What
That's
year?
to the state, so that's not Pentucket related, that's to the state.
No, it was Pentucket's reimbursement on, I was curious as to why the entire circuit breaker wasn't being applied to the budget in the following year. So I asked some questions and they've sent me data. They sent me 20
That's a
years of
state
data.
number. That's not a local number. 75% is a state number. The
Yeah,
state
the
sets that.
reimbursement to Pentucket
Yeah,
on
75.
circuit breaker. Yes,
75%.
that's what I looked at, yes. I'm just saying it's been fairly consistent for at least 5 years.
That's 75% though, not above 75%.
Before that, you got one good year, I think, yeah.
75% is the maximum, is it not?
One year there was something extra tossed in, it was weird, but yeah, it was kind of nice. But
Yeah,
you're
so
right,
we've
20 years
got,
ago.
yeah,
much
I think
more.
we've got it all done out year by year. It's not on this slide, but there's another presentation which does it
I'm
year by
glad
year.
to share the data they sent me with you
Sure.
at any time.
So that's circuit breaker. So I hope that answers your question a little bit. So OSD, we talked about this last year. This was the Operational Services Division. So 14%. This was thrust upon us. This is what they said. All the private, so out-of-district private schools could charge additionally up to 14%, which why would you not? It's not a 14% increase to us. It's really just a 12% increase because every school district was budgeted at 2% because you might recall a slide from last year. The historical increase was about 2% by OSD. So we had budgeted about 2%, but it goes up 12% more. The state did set aside $75 million to address this. But you have to have extraordinary circumstances. So to qualify for that, any of those funds, your expenses this year have to be 25% higher than last year's with special education. Roger Hatch, who, if you work in finance, you would know his name from the state. He actually helped make the Chapter 70 formula, said that you might get maybe 2 school districts that would qualify for any funds out of $75 million. So it's there. The House Ways and Means just released an update, and it still is at the 25%. So we'll see if anybody replies. It's not been fully finalized yet. But that means our additional costs for this year is that number right there, 457,344, is what we're paying just on out-of-district expense. That was the increase, sudden increase, yep.
How does that number compare to the increase as a result of this last year? And this 14% was implemented last year?
It was implemented this year, it starts this year. So this is our projected cost. So we've not, as Dr. Jarvis said earlier, we haven't finished paying out the full fiscal year. So if you took last year's amount and multiplied it by the 12%, you reduce the students, you'll come out to 457,344 is what we're projecting our cost would be. And we talk about this in terms of teachers, so you know, that's about 5 to 6 teachers. Yep.
But this is the issue that came up last year. It's been included in the budget that we already passed for last year.
Yeah, we're good for
It's
this.
not a new issue for this year.
Correct.
It's a reflection on what already happened.
Yes, yeah, sorry, we've got this.
So
Yeah.
this is kind of old news. We are.
Yeah, it's just, so I think what we're doing here is just showing that if you're not up at the 75%, if you're not moving forward with them, you're gonna get yourself, dig a hole real quick, which continues on. So this is, again, challenges where we are, challenges that we're facing. A lot of legislation actives, yeah, go ahead.
Go back to the 75 million, so the state is sitting in the 75 million right now that nobody's.
They've set aside the 75 million, you have to have 25% more fiscal year 24 than fiscal
And
year
do we
23.
talk to our representatives and see how, so what are they saying about that?
We're our representatives, so it's in the House Ways and Means, they're letting them do their thing, and that just came through, and I don't know how our folks voted.
Okay.
But everyone knows, so every lobbying group for us would have voted to drop that number down and just make the reimbursement for the one
So
time.
we'll
for
be
12%.
looking for 400,000 to be reimbursed out of that 75.
Yeah, so that 400, that some odd thousand, which again, is covered issues, but that 400-something thousand, we were just looking for one time so that circuit breaker could hit it next year, and we're not paying that one-time fee of the 400 plus.
Hey, Doctor?
Yep.
So this is the cost, the cost increase for the out-of-district students.
Correct.
So if we projected X a year ago, and I think you showed a reduction in out-of-district students.
Yep,
in actual, there's a savings there?
So we haven't realized, so what you're saying compared to this number?
Yeah.
So sure, if you take, that's why it's gonna be about, we're projecting out about this amount, 100% right. We went from 39 to 36. I think it was the number of students, but I don't know exactly which places they went to.
Understood.
But yeah,
Okay.
that's correct.
Just trying to understand it all.
Yep. So legislative wise, there's at least 3 bills that are sitting out there right now to increase circuit breaker to 90% and also include transportation into that. I mean, that would be a huge, huge win for every school in the district. There's 2 bills that are out there to reduce the threshold from 4 times threshold to 3 times. That means you would first go up to 42,000, well this past year, February 2,789 instead of the 57. So you're basically saving 15,000 and then the 75% they cover would be a lot more significant. There's all sorts of requests to review all special education, how it's being applied, what's happening, how are we using the case law to decide what students have to receive, what they should be receiving, because there's a big, as Dr. Jarvis, I don't think you would disagree with me on this, there's a big difference between what IDEA requires and what Massachusetts requires. Again, our job is to make sure we comply with all statutes with students, more importantly, that every student gets what they need. But there's a lot of requests for that. And then there's also, I know we've heard from several of our people saying, we want to look at, you saw all those programs that Dr. Jarvis was talking about that we run. You saw that there were, I don't know exact number, but the 32 employees we have in 4 or 5 classrooms. So there's talk of saying, hey, we should incentivize school districts to do this because then the children are staying in the district. Let's come up with some method to do that. I think that's a long shot. I don't think it has a lot of support, but it would be certainly welcome. Another issue, the enrollment and potential growth. So this is October last year to October this year. You'll recall we talked about just all the red. So you see this year we still have quite a bit of red. Some interesting points here. So highlighted blue is where we added teachers in these spots. If you look at Page in 2nd grade, so what is this a function of? Hard to say. Is it a function of we built a new middle school, high school, and people are moving in? Might be. But we're going from, last year, there were 41 students in that grade. This year, there's 47 students in that grade. So just that grade alone added 6 students. If you look at Bagnell, Bagnell's population last year, 451 students. This year, 480 students. So there is an upward tick, which we knew was going to happen. We see that in the numbers. Uh-oh, I'm sorry. Wrong button. District-wide. Here's some numbers. Oh, sorry. Another thing that's important to point out here, though, if you look at the bottom, for elementary, average class size is just under 21, so it's 20.74. Our target K1, 2 is 18. When you see, again, if you're a Page, if you're a Western, you're like, oh my goodness, there's 23, that's 5.5 over. Yep, that's 5.5 over where we want it. Next year it'll only be, so 21 is the target next year. So when you're at 21, it won't be anywhere near that. If we're at, you'll be 2 over where you would want it to be. So these are our enrollment numbers. And you can see we have this one odd year in 3rd grade where the number was low. But other than that, they've been rising. Preschool is not always a good indicator. We've not seen it be a great indicator of what we're going to have in kindergarten. So still, we always sit and wait to see what comes from kindergarten enrollment, and if we have to add a teacher, we add a teacher. So movements are unpredictable, you never know. The 40B, the impact, hard to say. So there's a project, Groveland project looking at Merrimack. Is Groveland, where's my Groveland folks? So 300 units, is that about right?
190,
200.
190.
All right, sold. All right, so one of the things that comes up, like, so we don't know. Like, you'll hear, like, you can read a lot of research on this. Tufts has done some studies on these. Like, some people will say, you know, this is gonna ruin us. You're gonna have 1 kid per unit. That's gonna add 200 some odd kids. Other people, whoever's doing the project will say, no, you're only gonna have like 15 kids. Who knows? The reality is, any student shows up anywhere in our district, we take them in and we have to educate them. What does that do to our classrooms? Every kid that goes into 40B housing, they don't all go in kindergarten. Like, they're spread out, preschool through 12th grade. So, yeah, what ends up happening likely is you're just gonna have some bigger class sizes. Unless there's a huge concentration of students in one particular area, then you might be adding teachers in that area. So we just, you know, people will debate that nonstop, and I've heard, and not just in our towns, but in other places I've been, I've heard these debates about coming in. 0.8 was a factor that get used in building developments. So if it was somewhere around 200, that would say there's 160 kids. Do I think 160 kids are gonna get added to? No, I think at the 200, who knows? Like, you might add 60 kids. But again, spread out over kindergarten through 12th grade. Big issue for us right now. Big issue for Pentucket. Big issue statewide. So Dr. Jarvis talked about we're having to expand programs because there's higher needs. It's great. We're not graduating out of college and university students who are looking to come into special education. Does not happen. I think the last we checked, there was a handful out of summer college and university. That's it. So there's 4 different major areas where we're able to get these filled. The major way we get this filled, we find a teacher or paraeducator who's had a degree, and they're great. They're great. They're solid. They have a good understanding of special education, and we work with them to get their emergency license and then to get licensed in that field. That's the best success that we've had. Periodically, you do have someone who moves into the area, wants to be here in Pentucket working in our programs. That's always fabulous as well. Ms. Simone's back there. She's been working on partnerships with, I'm gonna miss one here, let's see. Merrimack College, Endicott College, BU, Wheelock, which is now the same, Boston College, Endicott, Gordon. She's been reaching out to all those, and we're working on trying to find fellowships and opportunities for bringing more student teaching. We have more student teachers this year, I think, than we've had in the last decade, probably, which is fabulous. That's what you want. But again, this is an issue. If you're expanding programs, which every school district is, you're expanding programs, and there's no personnel to fill them, that's going to be a problem. And that's something, sure, we have to address as a district, but so too is the state going to have to try to figure out what they're going to do. The emergency licensure is great, but it's only good for so long. And then, you know, you have to go find more emergency licensures. So what we haven't reinstated this year from what was cut the prior school year, that's a whole list right here. I will tell you, if you look on the right-hand side, JV2 field hockey was reinstated, but that never happened because there was no JV2 field hockey, boys soccer, or girls soccer. And JV volleyball already did exist, but they just had an additional coaching segment. By the way, all these slides will be up, so you'll be able to see. They'll be on prsd.org. By the end of the day tomorrow, they'll be up there with a hyperlink so you can look at these. And this is, I think, just a simple thought. If we maintain what we're doing, you saw from Mr. Conway the strength of what we're doing, what we're growing and developing. If we keep doing what we're doing, we make minor adjustments. Like last year to this year, we've had to make big adjustments. The year before that, we had to make big adjustments because of cuts. We had to override, we didn't replace all those cuts. But I think we're at a point now where we should just have to make minor adjustments. Nothing that's going to be financially burdensome to any of the towns. But if we just make minor adjustments, we should continue to see student achievement to grow as those students who have been experiencing that consistent curriculum matriculate up on through, and opportunities. We have, I think, 7 new clubs that we added this year at the middle school and high school. So these opportunities, not just in clubs and activities, but also in programs, like when we're doing robotics, we're doing computer science, and we're doing, we're looking at pathways, things that make sense for our students. Minor adjustments, and we'll get there. But overall, we're in pretty good shape, particularly relative to other school districts. So questions, and if no questions, that was one of the Saturday Night Live skits, questions, no questions. So if there are no questions, I'm happy to turn it over to Mr. Jennings, who will facilitate the regional agreement conversation. Okay, so I'm going to switch over. Do you have a microphone?
I do, yep.
Okay, great. I'll open up that slide for you.
Hello? Hello?
Tap it and give it a second, maybe it takes a second.
Hi. All right, so last fall and winter, about a year ago, the select board had a couple of meetings, both internally and with the finance committee, and we sent around a memo early in the year. I handed out copies of this, but hopefully this isn't new to the select board members and perhaps the finance committee members in the room. As I think people know, the agreement calls for being reviewed every 3 years. There were revisions approved by the 3 town meetings back in the spring of 2019, concurrent with the approval of the middle high school override. And so that was really part of the trigger for the board looking at it last cycle. So we had sent around some, I think, pretty modest revisions, but I think some of them are more significant than others. Some are housekeeping, some are more substantive. And what you have in front of you reflects the support of the West Newbury Select Board and Finance Committee. There were some suggestions that were made in the process that aren't reflected here, so we really tried to focus on the things that were broadly supported. So the response we got last cycle was it just wasn't the right time with the operating override going to the Groveland and Merrimack voters in the spring. This was maybe just not the right time. So once we got through last budget cycle over the summer, we started talking about this again and talking with my counterparts in Groveland and Merrimack. I know they've shared it with each of their boards. And the idea is to see the modifications that West Newbury's proposed broadly supported. As people probably know, to get amendments to the regional agreement, all 3 town meetings have to approve them. So it's really important that we only put anything forward if it's broadly supported. So we did get some comments today from Rebecca reflecting input from her board. And it sounds like there's a lot of support, some additional ideas. And I know Merrimack, I don't know where they stand, but I think the goal, while we have everyone here tonight, is just to really restart the conversation looking ahead to the spring town meeting cycle. I don't know what the deadlines are in Groveland and Merrimack, but for us to have something on the spring warrant, we really want to know in no later than like the end of January if we were going to put something on the warrant for the spring. So we did put together some slides summarizing the proposed changes. I know we're already kind of pushing up against the timeline tonight, and we don't want to belabor this in great detail, but I will just start by pointing to the last sentence of the first page of the memo, which is that to get to where we have ideally broad agreement among the 3 towns on proposed amendments, our board's happy to participate in a joint meeting like this with all 3 boards, or to designate a member of the board as a working group, whatever needs to happen over the next 2 months or so, just to get focused on this so we can ideally get something on the spring warrant to, at minimum, get some housekeeping done, but also there are some more substantive changes that I think are of material interest to our town. So, Justin, if you could just advance the slide. Oh, Great.
I gave you power.
Great, thanks, Justin. So, a lot of words here, but this one is maybe the most interesting of them. Right now, the agreement provides that there shall be not less than one elementary school in each town. And the intent of the proposed revisions is to have it more empowering than mandatory. So it would revise it to say there may be one or more elementary school in each member town, provided, however, that the towns may decide to share or consolidate elementary schools in the future. And it's largely unchanged from there. So there is no intent at this time for any of the schools to be consolidating, but this came up in discussion last year because it was viewed as an impediment if in the future that was something that any of the towns wanted to talk about. At this time, it's not, but it would be, if there was that interest in the future, that language would be a barrier. So this would really not necessitate any change. It would just basically facilitate conversations if there were future conversations about potential consolidation. So I think last year this was maybe one of the items that was the most questioned, but there's really no nefarious intent behind it. Next, sorry, Justin.
I get it for you.
I got it. This next one is, I would consider really a housekeeping article, and this is slightly changed from what went out in January, but basically it would just clarify that the ingredients of the budget that Pentucket provides to the towns has 3 different ingredients. One is the debt service, one is the capital costs, and one is the operating costs. And I think the most substantive change here is changing the definition of a capital project from an item over $10,000 to an item over $20,000. And in West Newbury, that would better align with our capital bylaw and the definition of a capital project. But it's also intended to expedite the district's ability to respond timely to issues that come up that are over 10, less than 20, that, given inflation over the years are really more, there's significant costs, but they're more maintenance issues than what we would consider capital items. The next item, this is really intended to clarify some of the language and change some of the dates on the maintenance plans for the schools. This is something that has been provided over the years in the district budget when it's presented to the towns, generally in January, February. The intent is to actually get the capital projects more like mid-fall, like by mid-October, rather than mid-January or February, to better align with the town's capital planning. And this is something we talked about, probably 14 months ago. The district made the adjustment last cycle. They did it again this fall. Jonathan's been terrific with submitting the district's, potential capital projects for Page School. We got those a couple of weeks ago. It fit really nicely with our capital planning timeline. So that's what that change is intended to do, is to make sure that when the district's providing its recommendations for capital projects for the subsequent fiscal year, that it's timely for our preparation of our capital program and our bringing forward funding articles at the Springtown meeting. And then also this would provide that by mid-January, the towns will be provided with a maintenance plan for the following budget year. It's really just to improve the town's understanding of the maintenance that's going on and improve transparency. A lot of this has actually been really, really good in my observation. It's just to kind of lock that in, and I think what Jonathan presented earlier tonight is very exciting with the work order system. I think that's all moving in the direction we're all trying to go, is just make sure that the communication among the towns and the district remains really strong. And then there's also proposed addition of language that, as part of the closeout of the fiscal year, that on or around September 1st, that Pentucket would provide basically a year-end maintenance report covering the preceding fiscal year, So the towns would have a good record of how, the town's asset, the town's only elementary schools, how that was maintained in the prior year. So it's really all just to maintain the strong communication that I think has been happening for a number of years now. The next proposed change, this would be to really restore the Regional Finance Advisory Committee, which I know used to exist prior to the revisions that were approved in 2019. So it would really reconstitute that committee. Some of the changes that were made to the regional agreement in 2019 basically eliminated that committee, but kept in some vestiges of some language that still refer to the committee, so it reads a little awkwardly right now. In practice, myself and Carol and Rebecca meet every month with Justin and Greg, or now with Justin, Suzanne, and Jonathan. So we have great communication at the kind of administrative level, but at the select board and finance committee level, maybe the communication is hit or miss. So I think the intent of this proposal is to reestablish a regional committee comprised of a select board member, the chief financial officer of each town, as well as a FinCom member. And this is the way it's written. There'd be really at their discretion as to how often they meet, but it does provide that there'd be, I think, no less than 2 meetings per year. So it's really, again, just intended to formalize some of the communication, kind of restore some of the kind of things that used to happen, but really just like this meeting tonight. And then the chairmanship would rotate among the designated select board members from the towns. Let's see, this is a continuation of that same section. Advisory committee, this is where it refers to the 2 meetings during the budget process, including one in late January, intended to coincide with the release of the governor's budget, and an additional meeting in March prior to the school committee's vote. It's intended to make sure that the 3 communities' leadership convenes prior to the school committee's vote, and so there's, things happen so quickly in January, February, March, everyone's busy with their own budgets, but I think this would help to ensure the 3 towns are staying in communication during that process. Let's see, this last one, the sentence that's shown in strike-through about the school committee arranging to meet with the finance committee or select board at their request, that's actually just moved to the prior section. So that's shown as strike-through, but it's really just because it's moved, so that language wouldn't change. There is language in the current agreement that provides that part of the Pentucket proposed budget would include itemized expenses specifying all items costing $1,000 or more. In working with Greg LeBrecq, we all felt that's a little bit like hyper detailed given the scale of the budget. That's not necessarily useful information when you're getting down to itemizing that degree of expense. So we felt that would be kind of, no one would miss it if that was struck. And that was it. So that's what we put on the table. I know Groveland had some additional suggestions. I know Kathy or Rebecca, I don't know if you want to introduce those tonight. But really, I think our main objective, especially given that it's, we've already been here for a while this evening, is just to sketch out a process between now and mid to late January of how we're going to get some number of amendments, hopefully onto the Springtown meeting warrants. So, Wendy, did you want to elaborate? No. Did you guys want to share that tonight, or just, or I know you sent it to Carol as well.
Why don't we push it forward, because I think,
Yeah.
we've been here for
Yeah.
a long time, with a lot of information and slides.
Good.
Lots of slides.
Lots of slides.
Lots of slides.
So if I may propose, one of the things we talked about was an advisory committee. Maybe we could formalize that tonight, and then we can go through that process of putting amendments forward for a town meeting in the spring. Would that make sense for the 3 towns?
You can't just form it without the town meeting voting to have it, right?
Well, so at this point, it would be an ad hoc or an informal committee,
Right,
right?
it'd
That
be
we
an
would
informal.
gather in a similar fashion as the advisory committee, so
Yeah.
that we put something forward.
Yeah, we could meet in smaller group, yeah, without so many slides.
Yeah,
Not
I think
fast.
if each select board, designated a member and just
Yeah.
put together an
Yes.
off-hours meeting,
Yeah.
we could probably hammer this out pretty quickly.
I think so.
And the finance
You're
committee.
also gonna include a finance committee member?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
What if they call without one?
So do we want to take that back as an action for the 3 select boards to designate someone with the administrator and the finance committee, come back to this group, and we can formalize that ad hoc committee, and then we can move forward with those amendments?
Yeah, sounds great.
All right, excellent.
All right, so are we, Angus, are you good on your end? Thank you very much. I just want to quickly thank everybody for coming tonight. Again, this was originally Dr. B's idea. I thought it was a great one last year. I think it continues to be. Thank you to the entire district team. We put a lot of time in to put together the slides that you all saw tonight that hopefully laid out pretty thoroughly what is going on in the district. I think we adopted a position as a committee, and the district did some time ago that when it comes to partnerships, surprises are bad. And this is an effort to make sure that we're all on the same page. The more we do that, obviously our work affects everything you do, and vice versa. The more we all are on the same page and doing this together, the better it is for families and residents. So I know you all have families and things that, other meetings you have to go through the rest of the week. So thank you for making the time tonight to be here. And thank you again to Dr. B and his team. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
All those in favor? Thank you, everybody.